Thank you.
So welcome everyone, and for those joining us online, great to see you. My name is Julian Goresko. I'm the Sustainability Director for Johns Hopkins in the Office of Sustainability, and really looking forward to today's panel to talk about campuses as living laboratories and how we can use our campuses as test beds for innovation to scale sustainability solutions and create connections between campus facilities professionals and researchers, both students and faculty. So this has been an ongoing endeavor of the Sustainability Leadership Council for the past several years now, has been to study models at the national level for the higher education sector.
This is Campus's Lab.
It is, come on in, welcome. And to think about models for programs that might exist here at Johns Hopkins that really allow us to connect our research mission with our operational one. And so oftentimes what folks like me see who are on the practitioner side of the sustainability world is we have students and faculty doing research, thinking oftentimes at the local, national, and global scale. And many of the paradigms and challenges that are being studied are things that exist as a microcosm on our own campuses. And at the same time, Johns Hopkins is very large. We own, I mentioned this earlier for some of you who are here during the lunchtime remarks, but we own 15 million square feet of space as a university. We lease 3.5 million square feet of space. We are the largest private employer in the state of Maryland. We have a very large footprint, and even at the same time, there is this disconnect that exists between research and practice oftentimes. And so the real question is, how can we close that gap? How can we do the matchmaking and the connections that really help empower to use our campuses as laboratories for innovation? So I'm joined today by three now, but what will be four panelists who are going to join us today. That's Dr. Kellogg Schwab. And if you maybe we could, I was going to have each of you introduce yourselves. I'm realizing you're not on camera, so I don't know how that will work. So maybe you can just run through your names, and when you give your presentation, I'll have you do that. So Dr. Kellogg Schwab, Dr. Kathy Szlavecz, and Marty Kajic from the Bloomberg School of Public Health. And then we're going to be joined by Elsie, who's a doctoral candidate in the Bloomberg School of Public Health as well. And you're going to be hearing perspectives from these four individuals about their work and how it relates to this topic, and really how we can help set the stage for leveraging Johns Hopkins' identity as a global research enterprise. And as the university almost most synonymously known with being a research university, to really leverage that through partnerships around our physical campuses. Elsie, welcome. So I think we have everyone here now, and we're going to start our session today with this. It's going to be probably about 25 or 30 minutes of presentations. We're going to do a little bit of a Q&A with our panelists, and then we're going to open it up for Q&A. So super excited for those of you who have been here, whether you're joining us like for the first time today, whether you've been here all day long. It's been a really fantastic day so far, and looking forward to hearing from everyone. So with that, I'm going to share screen, and Kellogg, let you come on up.
That looks like my first slide.
It does not.
Let me tell you about. It's always good to have backup. Thank you. So hello, my name is Kellogg Schwab. I'm a professor in the Department of Environmental Health and Engineering. That's part of the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health and Whiting School of Engineering. I'm director of the Hopkins Water Institute, and I'm also a member of the Sustainability Leadership Council. And what I was going to do is set the stage a little bit from the research perspective of this. And then you're going to hear some about the teaching perspective of it. And you're going to actually hear from some facilities in the trenches about what they're doing for our buildings in here. And then we get a student perspective, which is also very valuable in this. And so I'm going to actually talk about Johns Hopkins University grounds and infrastructure as a test bed for sustainability research and teaching, campus as a living lab. So that's not working. A little history on this. So 147 years ago, in 1876, Johns Hopkins University opened. And the first president of Hopkins, Daniel Gilman, stated the mission of the new university in his inaugural address: to educate its students and cultivate their capacity for lifelong learning, to foster independent and original research, and to bring the benefits of discovery to the world. So then what does that mean for us? And I will tell you that the JHU students are the glue of the university. They are the innovators of the future, and the committees they form by bringing other faculty together allows for really broad dynamics. And it's exciting because they keep us on our toes. We have some of the best and brightest all the way through undergraduate, master's, and PhD. And so it's really an important part that I say first, that the students are the glue because we are in a university. And then Johns Hopkins University facilities is the backbone that enables the university to thrive. Facilities managers, facility operators, take care of our grounds and all those buildings, all those millions of square feet, not easy. And opportunities are there as well for us. And finally, the faculty help drive research and dissemination along with the students and our postdocs and fellows. We help disseminate this information. And we do have somewhat of a bully pulpit that we can integrate this in, but it does not diminish whatsoever that it's our students and also the faculty, staff, and facilities that are incredibly important on that. Well, you think I learned? I'll catch on there. So what about this campus as a lab? And you've heard about it, and just briefly, the programs enhance faculty and student opportunities to utilize a physical campus as a test bed for innovation to support sustainability in education, research, and service missions, while developing outcomes that can strengthen on-campus sustainability practice and inform solutions to the local, national, and global scale. And we have different modalities that we'll use here at Hopkins. Isn't this? It could be grant-funded or self-funded faculty or student research projects. There can be course-based projects. We can actually use our campus as part of our courses in there, and you'll hear about that. Service projects, and even student internship projects. So I'm just going to give you a snapshot of some of the things that have gone on at Hopkins and are going on now. So past, if you've ever been to Mason Hall, this is where admissions reception and administration exist. And they also have these exhibits there. And if you wander around, they have pictures of Albert Einstein. And in the bottom right corner of one of those exhibits, in the very bottom right corner of one of those exhibits in there, is this little note here. And this note states, when the university moves from the original downtown site to the Homewood campus in 1914, engineering students were responsible for maintaining the boilers, reciprocal engines, steam turbines, and electrical generators in the powerhouse of the new campus. Now, my incentive was probably to keep the place warm, so they had some kind of incentive in there. And it's kind of humorous. They had all sorts of things here, and they were doing steam, and there's pressure in here. And you can't really see it, but this is a faculty member who's sitting over and pointing at the students who are actually working on the machinery in there. So we have a legacy over 100 years of doing things, of learning from our own buildings. It's incredibly powerful. Not only is it an incentive, now we can have discussions whether that's equitable now and that, but we have the ability to use things in our own buildings. That makes life a lot easier if you think about it. So what's going on? Just two snapshots of Campuses Lab from the research side of things that is somewhat just by serendipity that occurred, but it's what we're going to leverage, in my opinion. The first one is actually the SARS, so the severe acute respiratory syndromes, coronavirus 2, wastewater epidemiology. Now, when this pandemic hit, our university, we all went home, and then we slowly started coming back. And one of the challenges is at the beginning of that reintroduction of individuals and students into that, we did not have good diagnostics yet. If you remember, I know it feels like decades ago, it was only 3 years ago. And so what we did as faculty, along with our students and postdocs and facilities, is we monitored the wastewater from all the undergraduate dorms twice a week with composite samples. And you can see here, we did it in manholes and manhole collections here. We had auto samplers that we obtained that would collect a composite of wastewater over 24 hours. We did this in the basement buildings. This is a sewer outflow in there. It looks pretty straightforward. It's actually pretty hard to figure out where the waste stream ends up from these buildings in there. And we actually worked across the street in the School of Medicine as well, where we could have a positive control from those patients that were in there in COVID in that. And we developed a system, as did other universities, where we could predict a couple days before an outbreak started occurring in those first several months. And we did this for 2 years. It was incredibly powerful. And so that was part of that innovation that we were able to use and be nimble on. The second one I'll describe, and you'll hear more about this later on in our talks here, is monitoring potable water or drinking water in campus buildings. So we have my lab. I'm a water microbiologist and environmental engineer, and we have our lab the capacity to assess water anywhere in the world, but we also do it in our own buildings. And part of that is we've monitored water from our drinking water fountains in there, and we have our teams that are doing this. We've done it actually, some of it's from the safety showers in there. That water is not used very often, and you'd like to know. And so innovative ways to make sure that that water is refreshed is important in there. And you can't really see it, but this is the guts of a building. That's where I get the most excitement, is in the basement in there. My air colleagues get most excited in the top of the buildings where they're out there touching the air in that. So together we can do this combination, working with facilities to allow us access, which is unprecedented in that, to develop the tools and techniques to try things out. Important, do no harm. These buildings are living buildings, people are in them, and we can't alter that. We want to have the safety of the individuals, but we can try new things and off streams, and it's very powerful and it's quite exciting. So finally, what about the future? Where do I see this going? And part of that is the faculty, students, and facilities management working with actually the architects and builders to integrate campus as a lab opportunities to future buildings and grounds development. A big push is making things modular. Why would you want to make it modular? Well, the buildings are designed to last decades, and we have no clue what we're going to be doing in 30 years with respect to monitoring and evaluations. If I held this up for you 20 years ago, it would not be a smartphone that has more technology to get us to Mars. It wouldn't even be around yet. So we don't know. So we want it modular so that we can plan this so that others, students and faculty generation from us now, would have the ability, and we pilot test systems and sensors beyond the bench. And you hear a little bit about that in addition. And I test you that we need to engage with development. And the teams of development can showcase university-wide campus as a lab to donors, but also prospective students. Because this is a really cool thing we're doing. How do we disseminate that information is incredibly important. And work towards making all 9 of the Johns Hopkins University schools plus Applied Physics Laboratory, which is the entire size of the university combined under APL in there. And together, all these entities, a part of Hopkins, make them as sustainable as possible through research and innovation, leveraging campus as a lab. With that, I'll turn it back over to my colleagues here for the next part. All right, you figured this out.
Elsie, would you like to come up? Sure. Me. Just stop sharing and reshare between these. So.
Okay.
Go. You are.
Perfect. Well, hello, everyone. Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be speaking as a part of this panel on campus as a lab. And I am a PhD student in the Department of Environmental Health and Engineering at the School of Public Health, but I've also been a member of the Campuses Lab Working Group through the Sustainability Leadership Council, which you've heard a lot about today. And so I'm going to be talking about some of the work that we've been doing as a working group, but also the student perspective in some of this and how Cal can be important for kind of the multitude of students across the university. So I just want to acknowledge that this work has been done by many people. I have the pleasure of talking about some of it, but there's many current working group members, former working group members, as well as input that's been provided by the SLC, JHU faculty, students, staff, and leadership into developing this Cal vision and a potential program. So what is Cal, which I think it's interesting that Kellogg showed this definition as well and kind of how it might relate to students. So campus as a living laboratory or campus as a lab programs. They utilize physical campuses for education, research, and service missions. And then they provide students with this applied experience to inform local, global, and national solutions. And some of these things, kind of from my perspective as a student, what some of the benefits of it might be is from the research side. Again, there's this opportunity to test campus sustainability solutions. There's so many grand sustainability challenges that we're facing, and there's this real opportunity to use our physical campus to gain a better understanding of what some of the interventions and solutions might be to them, and to be a part of that and to collaborate across multiple different transdisciplinary research and partnership teams. There's also an opportunity to support publications and pilot data from students that are interested in potentially applying for funding or pursuing research careers. The ability to actually get some pilot data or some publications from Cal work can seem really interesting and beneficial. From an education perspective, there's the project-based learning experiences. It's wonderful to be able to be out around campus and to get to know the physical spaces and to learn from those. Supporting existing and new courses. As the world changes, it's always great to have opportunities to kind of update courses and to be reflective of where we are. And Cal has an opportunity to support that, as well as to advance student-led research. And then from the service side, seen as this opportunity to discover local, national, and global sustainability challenges, solutions, and to be this test bed for innovation. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the work that we've been doing as a working group in kind of developing a potential Cal proposal and some of the research we've been doing to understand what this could look like at Johns Hopkins University. So internally, we've been doing research to understand what's happening that's campus as lab at the university and what might some of the opportunities be. So we did a suite of interviews with JHU faculty and staff who are already working on Cal projects, and you'll have the opportunity to hear from some today who are really implementing this and have a lot of lessons learned to share. Also doing presentations and feedback sessions on as we're developing this proposal, really iterating on it with SLC members, faculty, as well as JHU leadership. We also want to look and have been looking externally at Cal programs. What can we learn from peer institutions that have these programs and have had them ongoing? So some of the members of the research team or of the working group have done research into other Cal models, have done interviews on peer programs, as well as getting an understanding of the landscape of Cal, both within the United States, but also if there's any international models to look at as well. So a few more examples of some Cal projects based off of our learning from these interviews. There's many, many more that could highlight as a part of this, but I just picked a few because I think they show different elements of Cal. So the one on the top is kind of the Meatless Monday program, which is researchers and staff at the Center for a Livable Future have for a long time worked with JHU Dining on understanding kind of and implementing and embedding a Meatless Monday campaign. The second one is a carbon pricing project, which was led by a SACE graduate student to explore kind of the social cost of carbon pricing in university procurement and design, as well as operational decisions and how that may influence the buildings that we're doing. And then the last one is the Green Labs program, which you've heard probably about today or at the table, but this pilot program to understand how our laboratory spaces really have a huge influence on sustainability and how we could test different innovative solutions using Cal to make them more sustainable. And from all of this kind of data that we've collected, we've come up with a couple of different focus areas that may be good for kind of a Cal program at JHU. So the first one is the importance of supporting interdisciplinary faculty and staff research as well as projects. There's also the importance of supporting student research and practice and service learning. The next kind of pillar is the new and existing courses and finding opportunities to integrate Cal into those, as well as supporting the JHU sustainability plan, that how can Cal really move forward some of the key drivers and the key elements of the sustainability plan. From these different forms of research, we also kind of came up with a couple of key Cal criteria. So what projects, what they should include to be considered campus's lab. And these are things that we can definitely discuss in the panel if these are the right ones, and could put a lot more up there. But 3 of them is the use of campus operations, the scalable local and global challenges, and then the ability to kind of test innovative solutions. So 3 things that are critical to a Cal program. And then what makes Cal unique? And this is somewhat from the student perspective and some of the grad students that were working on this, what we came up with as 3 areas that make a Cal program at JHU kind of stand out from other Cal programs. So the first one is just the legacy of research at Johns Hopkins University, that there's many really noteworthy research projects, and that can Cal become something that can support research of the 21st century. The top rate programs that JHU has, and the desire for students to come for these programs, and how Cal can really help to lift up these programs and make them of more interest to students who are coming to the university. And then that last one is a commitment to serving Baltimore. From this research and the conversations we've had, one of the key things is that there's this deep desire to make sure that innovations that are discovered on campus support the surrounding community of Baltimore. And the water that we have on campuses is the same water that's in the city. The air that we're breathing is the same. The food, in some ways, the supply chain that we're getting it, there's many similarities. So how can what we learn through Cal support Baltimore and also the region? So as next steps on kind of our working group, we're working to finalize the proposal and what it might look like, as well as some of the logistics of it. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Elsie. So I'm going to pass it off next to Dr. Kathy Szlavecz, who's going to talk a little bit about her work as a researcher on the Homewood campus and using the campus's grounds there as a laboratory for teaching. So I just have to, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it's a PowerPoint.
So I'm Kathy Szlavecz. I'm a research professor at the Department of Earth and Planetary Sciences, and I'm a soil ecologist. And I'm teaching various ecology courses, and I've been teaching them for a long time. And one of the motivation is to actually push the students through the door and go outside, which is the title of my course, because in my ecology, general ecology courses, different types, different titles, I discovered that a lot of our students graduate without even knowing that there is a stream around the campus on one of the sides. They just never go there. They just don't know. And that stream actually goes north, as we know. I mean, goes south, but north as well. Wonderful trail. And so they just have no clue. And along that, they have no clue what kind of plants, animals, what surrounds them. And I think any kind of sort of assessment of our environment should start with knowing what we see. So, not ready yet?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. No worries. So, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to really quickly go through some of the things that we do in my various courses. And just to start the conversation, and I guess we can go from there. So the first course, which will come up very soon, is actually a new one. It's called The Natural History of Homewood. And it's a first-year seminar. So I'm teaching this for freshmen. I taught this for the first time this past fall. And essentially what it is, it's focusing on observation. So we spend most of our time. Are we good?
You're all set.
Thank you. What am I pressing? Anything like this? Anything, okay. So I'll start with the natural history, and the learning goal essentially is just observing things, learning what kind of things live on the campus or around the campus, how we can get to know them, how we can get information to know them. But I also use this opportunity to connect all these observations to talk about some global environmental issues, such as biodiversity decline, or invasive species, or conservation restoration efforts. And so there are some other learning courses, but essentially I want them to be out there. I want them to know that there is this greener part of the campus, and I want them to spend more time as they are going on the 4 years of education. So I divide this course generally in two parts, the visible things and the not so visible or invisible things. And the visible things are in our face, obviously plants. So we do these kinds of observations using apps, and then it's just 1 hour. We detect, over 50 species, and half of them are native and the other half is non-native. And so this gives us an opportunity not just to talk about species invasion, but also the fact that different parts of the world, people value the same species different ways. So this is paper mulberry, highly invasive species. We cut them down as much as possible, but in their original continent, in Asia, they're highly valued, and people use this plant for all sorts of purposes. So the other visible part, obviously, birds. So for this, I have a guest instructor because I don't know birds very well. And he's coming and he's teaching the students how to use binoculars, which is not an obvious thing. And then again, in just 1 hour, just stepping out of Olin Hall, we detect 26 or 27 bird species with an expert. This also gives an opportunity. We just heard about, serving the community, to talk various initiatives or various NGOs that the students can potentially get involved. And one of them is Baltimore Green Space, which is a land conservation, local conservation NGO. The other one is this project called Birds of Urban Baltimore, and that's a project that the students can be involved. They're going out to neighborhoods for bird banding and just talk about birds. This is a more challenging, this is my area of expertise, to talk about not so charismatic things, which on the other hand make up essentially the large proportion, the largest proportion of global biodiversity. And of course, they are declining. We talk about, insect decline and all these, general issues. And so we have a conversation of how we can communicate this, how we can make this more digestible for the general people, that they care about these, maybe not so desirable things or not so attractive things, to the point that they really want to conserve them. And I'm being a soil ecologist, of course, I talk quite a bit, or we discuss quite a bit about their role in maintaining soil health. So we also talk about that whatever we see out there, it's not, hasn't evolved just naturally. Everything, or a lot of these landscape features, are a result of human impact that have been going on for hundreds of years. So we look at old maps, we try to see where we are and what changed. And we also talk about more recent massive, landscape alterations, such as this massive Stony Run restoration that's been going on behind Olin Hall, and talk about the successes and the not so successful part of it as much as we can. And again, this connects to another topic, which is, the local organizations, which are stewards of this local area, in this case, Friends of Stony Run. A parallel session, as I just learned, is going on about this. And so how they can be involved if they want to, the various restoration effort, getting rid of invasives and so on. So this is the challenging part for the students, is because for this particular course, they cannot use, they have to actually use pencil and paper. And so the main assignment is to go out to the same spot regularly every week, every other week, spend 30, 40 minutes and take handwritten notes. They can take photos as well, questions, reflections, and just seeing how things change. And at the end of the course, they actually like it. At the beginning, they don't know why is this happening? So the other two courses, we have actually questions or hypotheses. We're comparing things. We're comparing landscape types, and just show you a few examples of that. This is a project we did in Evergreen, actually Evergreen grounds, and we go there as well with the various courses. Where does leaf litter decompose faster, in the stream or the land? Why? Is beech decomposing faster than tulip poplar? Yes or no, why? We obviously take a lot of soil cores, examine soil cores, colors, texture, pH. We measure certain simple things about the below ground, the third dimensions under our feet, as I usually say. And again, we compare forest versus open areas, forest versus grasslands. We do a lot of earthworm samplings. That's always very popular. And then we do some functional things like measuring filtration rates. Sometimes we measure soil respiration in these different land cover types. We compare street trees around campus versus forest trees in terms of their species composition, size distribution. We look at flying insects, various projects. I am a big advocate of instrumentation, actually, environmental monitoring. And so perhaps this is one of the areas where this grant maybe could support our efforts. The right-hand side, that's actually a soil moisture sensor. And the green chip is a small computer, a radio transmitter, and a data logger all in one. It was developed here in the engineering school. And so we have a lot of them, and we can build a lot of them together. And I think this is important. We assembled this during COVID and did that test deployment in some behind Olin Hall and the Carnegie and some other places. And so I think it would be great because, first of all, each student, not just for this, the other projects as well, or each class could use the data that were collected the class previously. And these instruments also could collect data continuously, which allows us then to look at, changes in environmental conditions, daily, monthly, seasonal, and annual, and so on and so forth. And this is my last slide.
Thank you, Kathy. We're going to be joined next by Marty Kajic from facilities team in Bloomberg School of Public Health. Let me just pull up that material, Marty. We can get going. I am a PC user on a Mac, and it is all good. Ta-da!
Excellent, thank you.
You got it.
Thanks, Julian. Hi, I'm Marty Kajic, Senior Director of Facilities at Bloomberg School of Public Health. Been in higher ed coming up on 25 years, and with Hopkins 15 years. So I've been around the block a little bit. I'm going to give you facilities perspective, a little bit about what we do. I have a big idea. It's going to be a teaser at the end of the day. It's the answer to all problems. And then a little bit about how we're working on the academics and research side with faculty in sustainability and their work. So a little bit about what we do. Actually, didn't realize, when you're in school, the facilities is a career path, right? People come and fix things or clean things, and I should I should have known that because my father was a person that worked with his hands in the trades, and my mother was a custodial worker. And so kind of full circle for me as a facilities professional now. So it's looking back, it's kind of a little bit funny, but also satisfying. So what we do is all about stewardship. We are entrusted to take care of the physical assets of our institutions, and that's important to us. And why is because if we don't, it disrupts business, right? We have to make sure there's continuity in the academics, research, and the social aspects of our institutions. And then the how we do is that we have to build a sustainable organization that's fiscally responsible and environmentally conscious. So silos is a theme here, right? From a very 30,000 foot, what do we do in our silo? Pretty simple. We build. You see tower cranes across the campuses. We do a lot of new buildings in our institutions. We renovate existing buildings, and then we have to maintain them. And that's really the kind of distilled version of facilities management. But we cover a lot of ground, so to speak. Our work areas, our water, air, the materials that we go inside our buildings and outside, the waste management, we've talked about it today in some of the sessions, energy in some of the sessions, the natural environment. And we hope all of this gives us a healthy and a good environment to work in, right? It takes care of ourselves and the well-being of ourselves. And these are all sustainable topics, right? So everything that we do should have a sustainability conversation associated with it. So you have the academics and research side, and we've heard a lot of the kind of statements from President Gilman at the time of the institution about what we are as a university, right? We're here to educate our students. We're here to cultivate their capacity for lifelong learning, foster independent original research, bring the benefits of discovery to the world. Kellogg reminded us in his presentation of that. And I'm betting that there's some type of teaching and research going on in these same exact areas of facilities management, right? We know this. So what's the big idea, right? Communication, coming out of our silos and talking to each other, right? Understanding that there can be healthy conversations, good conversations, and we have to be open to that, right? And so if we do communicate out of our silos to our colleagues, to students, to staff, to faculty, whoever it is, from a facilities perspective, we will be on the path to success with Cal, right? That'll be the win, the big idea. So some examples, and some of this has been going on for decades, pre-me, right? So we've been lucky to work with Dr. Anna Rule, and she's in EHE, Environmental Health and Engineering. Jimmy Christian, who is the HVAC supervisor in our trade shops, he's been with us for 45 years. They work together in some of their classes along with Hopeton Davis, who's a maintenance mechanic in our HVAC shop as well, to help educate our students about some of our systems, right? So Anna has ventilation controls. She brings her students down into our mechanical room so we can talk them through all the components of our systems. Hands-on learning in a safe environment. They're not touching them like they were originally with the boilers, Kellogg, but it's a safe environment. They're allowed to understand the systems, and our team is there to help educate them about how they operate. It's a great experience. When we were taking these pictures, I said, we just need to continue to talk and see how we can enhance these conversations. And Jimmy said, oh, we used to have a board. We had a thermostat on a board and showed how a damper would move, and it shows how it goes back to a air handling unit, make all those components work. We can get that out of the closet. COVID, we kind of put that away, and we can take that to class. We can do a road show. Excellent, Jimmy. Great thinking there. So the other part of it that Anna has is environmental and occupational monitoring. So we allow students to come and sample our airflow, sample our air, and also take pressure readings in our systems. Again, hands-on training. She makes them do it. It's old school. You know, we have digital readouts of our pressure, static pressure across like filter banks like this, but she makes them do pitot tube readings across those different platforms or areas. So academics been doing it for decades, and we're excited to do more with Anna and company. Anna also does a lot of research with us. She does a lot of air sampling, and her team and colleagues also do that. So I'd be remiss not to point that out. But on the research side, if you felt the energy from Dr. Schwab, we feel it all the time, right? And we love it. We love it. And full transparency, when Dr. Schwab came to us several years ago, many years ago, he said, "Hey, I'd like to talk to you about sampling some water." And we said, yeah, we got this. We got filters on it. We're good, And he was persistent. He kept coming back, and he finally broke us, right? And he said, "Okay, let's talk this." But no, it's been great, and we've learned a lot. So we've been working with Dr. Schwab and his team, Dr. Natalie Exum, Dr. Stephen Chow, and then our team, Rufus Davis and Bill Jameson and Ken Grieve from the maintenance side. And we're looking at water differently because of the conversations with Dr. Schwab and his team. We think about water no differently from how you think about it in your homes, right? Previously to the conversations with Dr. Schwab. We know that it's all about consumption. And when we talk about sustainability, it's about reduction of consumption, right? But we said, or learned from Dr. Schwab, that no, it's got to be more. Just because pressure is down because a pipe was busted in your neighborhood, or you see brown sediment, those should be red flags not only in your home, but everywhere else. And so through conversations, we learned that we need to do different testing measures, right? Third-party testing, we worked with Dr. Schwab's team to allow them to do some testing. And then we installed some new monitoring systems to understand the different points that we now have to analyze and track going forward. Chlorine, turbidity, pressure, temperature, conductivity, which we weren't doing before. And it's all thanks to those conversations and the persistence of Dr. Schwab. And so now we have a better understanding, right? We know now that water is different. Water is more important than how we've understood it before. We now are also part of a data point in the community system, right? We're part of the research that's ongoing, so that's exciting for us. And then is this a model to go beyond, right? We go back to President Gilman's conversation, going beyond, and public health is saving millions at a time, right? Beyond. And so, well, we're really happy that there was persistence in the conversations, and we're looking forward to more conversations across the school with additional researchers and faculty. So the big idea, if we can come out of our boxes, our silos, and find opportunities to make those connections, I've personally said, as I see a hub article come out, and I see somebody from Bloomberg School of Public Health being highlighted, we're going to reach out, and I tell my team this, we're going to reach out and say, hey, let us know a little bit more about what you're doing and how we may be able to interact with you, or you may be able to interact with us to get a better understanding of what we need to do, not only in our buildings, but the community beyond. So that's my presentation, and I thank you.
So I'm going to ask our panelists to come up to the front. And if you could join us at the front of the room and chairs, make yourselves comfortable. I'm going to take down screen sharing. I know we've got some people here joining us online, so we can try and monitor this. And I'm looking at the clock. Thankfully, this is the longest session of the day. Hooray. And so we have lots of flex time, which is great. Here we go. And I'd really love to, I guess I'll just stand up here, it works. Just ask you all some questions, I think build off of your presentations today. And after that, we'd love to just open it up to the audience as a whole. And so some of the things we've talked about sort of leading up to today's session are about the potential for Johns Hopkins specifically. And so I wanted to hone in on one question in particular, which is, and I'm not going to direct this to any of you, maybe like let you piggyback off of one another and take some turns responding to some things. But if you were to imagine a university that fully embraces its campuses as laboratories for sustainability, learning, and innovation, what does that look like to you? And what do you think would be required to support realizing that vision? Anyone want to start?
I'll start.
Great.
Which is all I'm talking about didn't even involve buildings or any of those things, but I would like to see some kind of an environmental monitoring center on the campus. Something that involves different parts of the campus, maybe different human impact or differently managed, and have some instrumentation that monitors the outside environment. I'm just talking about outside because I don't know much about indoors. The outside environment, air, we have water, I would like to add soil, that's what I studied. So some instrumentation that takes long-term data, maybe on air quality, temperature, soil conditions. Stream, we have this stream quality changes over time, something like
that. Part of this is access, right? And so part of the opportunity is to find a closed door. How do you get around that closed door to see the opportunity in there, but still do no harm, right? I mean, the idea of buildings that are working is if you get it working, you don't want to mess with it too much because it's working, right? And so if we look in there and find things, I think we can help be a proactive way in there. And also, I agree with you, centers monitoring, but I would pitch this out to those that are in the audience that might not be in the bench science and all that. I think there's a powerful way for us as a campus and lab to integrate in beyond just the core sciences part of it. And the humanities side, this idea of climate change, that's the one thing that just keeps me up more than anything at night is the train wreck. What are we going to do as a society in that? And that integrates in how do we develop our buildings? How do we develop our kind of campus in a way that would go beyond just the best way to move the water, best way to move the air, to realizing that we have obligations to our next generations, and what can we do now? I would test you too. We don't need another report on climate change. Sorry, Darren. We know it's going to be a problem. What we need to do is what would we do if we got it right? This is others have promoted this as well. So if you had a vision of the approach to sustainability where things were working well, let's achieve that instead of always being on our heels saying, oh my gosh, it's going to get worse, more carbon, all that. That'd be a pitch. And I think the research and the education behind that could be really powerful.
Elsie, Marty, anything you wanted to add?
I guess for me, I think about this as almost as like a campuses lab in all approach. Is there a way to look at the existing courses and where there might be opportunities to integrate experiential learning and to utilize our campuses? Dr. on a rules class sounds amazing, but as a student, we have a lot of requirements we have to take, and there's not always an opportunity to take all the classes that you might want. But are there other courses that we have that could utilize our physical campuses and promote that experiential learning? Or as you're developing a research project, would there be an opportunity to have a Cal component of it? And what would that require? And I think, Marty, you said it really nicely, it's having that communication, some of those relationships built, because as students, we're only here for a limited amount of time, which can make it challenging. And from my perspective, the last thing you want is to form a relationship without any sustainability and lasting nature of it. And so could there be relationships that already exist that you can build upon and utilize kind of elements of it in a tangible, small enough piece of the student project?
Yeah, that student piece is a tough one because there is a finite period, right? And how do you keep that going? But I'd like to add that, culture, a little bit of culture change, right? We do get stuck in our silos, and we're like, we did the stiff arm control. Dr. Schwab. It's like we shouldn't have, right? We just shouldn't have, and shame on us. But so there has to be an openness. There has to be an environment that says, we're working on this. Come on in, right? It has to be that full open on door policy, right? So to be able to have those conversations and understand that nobody's going to, pinpoint the errors. We're going to help you get to a better company. The management practices of what we need to do is figures along for the building. And I think it's just there has to be a bit of that.
So I wanted to piggyback off of something you talked about with the student experience. So I hear from students a lot that, you know, in addition to their coursework, their experience on the physical campus is a huge part of, you know, of what it means to be a student at any university. And that, you know, as they see sustainability applied in campus grounds, in campus buildings, through signage, through events, you know, but and outside the classroom, an applied way, it has a big impact on them. It has a big influence, and something we hear from students a lot that matters to them. And so I guess one of the things we talked about a lot is, you know, I feel like we've touched on this, that, you know, we've been working towards building a concrete program model with a multitude of modalities. So as we look to deploy that in the future, how does this have the potential to enhance the student experience uniquely at Johns Hopkins? And, you know, we've had the second commission on undergraduate education. For those of you that are familiar with that, over the past couple of years at the university, a report came out. You know, a big piece of that was around the Hopkins semester, an applied semester of experience for undergraduates, you know, focusing on experience outside the classroom to apply those concepts they're learning, which comes right back to so many of the things we're talking about today. So we'd love to hear from any of you just to talk about that, the influence on the student experience in particular.
I guess I'm happy to start. I think there's kind of two pieces. There's like that active experience, which you can get as a student when you're taking a course or you're working on a project and you're deliberately utilizing campus spaces to advance what you're doing. But then there's also the passive experience that you get as you're walking around the Homewood campus. Do you understand the pollinator gardens that are happening? Do you understand the soil testing that you're doing in the stream threads? And how can we make greater awareness about the work that's happening, even if you're not directly involved in it? And I think that's part of the culture of kind of the university and embedding it, that it's everywhere to gain that understanding.
You said students are the glue, Kellogg, so I'm sure you have some thoughts on this.
I do. I mean, part of it's continuity, right? How do you get out there so that every student doesn't have to relearn and fight and scrap in the first couple of years to get in there? And so there are resources that are needed sometimes for this, and there's incentive. You need an advocate that helps do it, and then also we have a really neat opportunity in leadership right now. President of the university, all the way down to the provost and the different vice provosts, and all that really want to and understand that this is part of that program in there, and that can trickle down, you know, from the top, but also from the bottom. I'm going to be provocative. I can say now and there, you know, we think we're a business now. We run like a business, but we're still a university. We're still a school. And so how do we make sure that we acknowledge that we need to bring resources in? There has to be resources coming in. But I think we need to start figuring out ways that it's not just economic return. It's the idea of getting a cohort of individuals that communicate knowledge to others and to spread this out and do the best we can. I love it. They keep us on our toes in there. They keep me figuring out the latest papers and all that stuff. So I think it's going to be very powerful. It does take time though. It takes energy and.
Anything either of you'd like to add?
Me?
If you'd like to.
I think the students appreciate tremendously. This is the feedback I get, the hands-on learning. There's so much going on in the classroom or online and all this, so actually doing something different is a welcome change for them, and it's a different kind of learning. It's a learning nonetheless, and I think they should.
So if it's okay, maybe we can open it up to the audience now. I feel like you probably don't want to have me just throw questions at you up here at the podium awkwardly for too long, and so hopefully were you doing a time reminder and you have a question? Okay, Lisa, sounds great. Wonderful. Love that.
Maybe to say your name first at the beginning.
That'd be great.
Yeah, my name is Lisa Nearing about the civil education. My question, I hope it's not a boring question, but it's something that's on my mind, especially when we talk about like going into the guts of buildings or going on top of buildings for air monitoring. Is there any sort of conversation or concern over safety or any liabilities? Are there barriers and like where you can go and where we can take students? Is that sort of a conversation that you're having at all?
Absolutely.
Need to be done too. I mean, the last one, let's broken, push buttons, right? Being facetious there, but and it was done in a way that for us, it's facilities and knowledge and helps us, right? We don't go down there and we establish this is what we're gonna do, we communicate on that. You're spot on to that. I was a little tongue in cheek on that one from 107 years ago when the boiler plants, like, you know, they're all there. Think of their camp, they're all in their fancy clothes and all that. Your points are well taken. The school education, I think, is a powerful part of our university in there and figuring out ways for us to disseminate this beyond just that small class to a broader audience. And I think media, multimedia is here to stay. And so I would say it's two-way. Points well.
Yeah, I'd say it's all about process and procedure for us, right? We're happy to give access, but in a regimented way that, you know, everybody's gonna be safe and it's not just everybody going rogue. Whenever there has to be a kind of a scheduling to it that accommodates all, so. Because it's safety has to be number one.
So, yeah, so I'm the chair of the field committee in our department, and so we have been working on documents, we already have documents in place, and so field work has some risks involved depending on where you go and what you do, and so, yeah, from the start of what you're supposed to wear, and you bring with you and not bring with you, and, you know, be aware of, so depending on the course, we give out guidelines, and in some cases, they have to sign a waiver. I took them to fire towers, which was operating as a clock tower for many years. They have to sign a waiver, so nothing. So yeah, we are very much aware of this.
Yeah, that wasn't me saying that. You guys need to think about. I was a middle school science teacher and I wanted to do an activity up on the roof of our school building, and then quickly found out it was not possible. Like, we didn't have the right fence on the roof, so I couldn't bring. So, you know, there's certain boundaries in those things.
Oh, yeah. You will be at advance.
Yes.
Same with our international product. The students go international, food safety is number one.
Darren, feel free to introduce yourself and ask your question.
Derek Moore at Science. Got a question about, you know, what facilities is already doing or could easily do that could be useful for research and education. So the example with NRO is very interesting. So I'm going to support Kathy's ask for having outdoor environmental monitoring, but also it seems that the facilities is already making some measurements indoors of air, for example, or could easily do that. That's something to reach out that it might be, you know, faculty or lecturers hadn't thought about. Oh, hang on, that's being done. That could be quite easy to piggyback on. And getting towards it, there's some way that all the measurements that are routinely made for facilities have at least an educational, I suspect some of them have a research application. So I guess I'm suggesting that we'd like to find a way to get that communication going so we know what's routinely done. And then maybe it turns out that, okay, adding 2 more measurements is something that the facilities could easily do.
And I think, you know, again, we have to, I think from a facilities perspective, we have to be a little more proactive, right? And so going back to the last question about students, it's like, you know, we should be part of the orientation. A sustainable, you know, talking about sustainability and what we currently do with faculty and staff on that aspect, we have to be more proactive in it. And so we do attend faculty senate sometimes, and maybe there are ways that we can incorporate those conversations in the faculty senate. And just continue to think about ways like that, because the monitoring system wouldn't have been in place if it wasn't for Dr. Schwab persistent in place, right? And so that's a tool for us now, but it's also a research tool for Dr. Schwab. And so you're right, we have a lot of data that comes through our systems that, if not used by you, could be a data point that could be compared by what you're doing in your research, right? And I think that would be fantastic. We just have to figure out ways how we communicate with each other to make those connections.
And we're using that in preliminary data for grants submissions now in there, because knowing what's going on in a city environment, Baltimore is a unique place, right?
I have a question that sort of starts out technical, but then gets to this point of using data in a larger context for spurring new research. So I wondered what the cost was of the apparatus that you displayed the soil monitoring one. You know, how pervasive could those be? Or could you put it everywhere? Because Homewood is kind of a special place, right? Not every place is as pristine in some ways. And you will find other issues in other areas. There will be more interesting new data, not that far down the road. So I think in Baltimore. And also sort of from my technical perspective, understanding how to make those devices, monitoring systems more pervasive is very useful. But then sort of on the same track, but a little bit different for Professor Schwab. Could you do monitoring more pervasively? Would you get the same volume from facilities outside of Hopkins, or could you imagine doing that? And what sort of blocks are there, or what benefit would there be to that? Two of you, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
So the first one's on the monitoring.
Yeah, so the one that I showed you, the actual chip, the real, the computer radio transmitter, that is $20 a piece, and we already have that, so it doesn't cost anything. The sensor part is about $100 for one sensor, and if you want to do soil temperature, we built our own soil temperature device, and that's $5. And that's just because we have so many of them. But a lot of other instruments are a lot more expensive, especially if you buy them commercially. So if you, it depends on what you want to monitor. And it doesn't have to be, thousands of them. So it depends on what. At some point, there was a plan that on the side of Owen Hall, there is this settling pond, and so established something there. It's a slope, and so there's a lot of things.
It's still the plan.
It's still the plan. Okay. It is the plan. Okay, it has been a plan for a long time.
Plan next to a dream, so it's.
Yeah.
When it's working along.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. This is the first time I'm hearing, but.
That's why you come to do.
There we go. So anyway, so there will be instrumentation, so we can look at water table and also other kinds of things. So yeah, it depends on what we want to monitor.
But not too. They could be.
This particular case not too expensive. Yeah.
Sensors are getting cheap. It's powerful.
Yeah.
Good.
So part of the context of this, so I'm from APL, my name is Mike Slarner.
I was just about to say, APL makes a bunch of sense.
So I'm initially involved in a maker buoy, which took what would be several $1,000 ocean sensor system and made it, 3D printed it and got it off the shelf. A Raspberry Pi chip. It was $200. The cost of production was a factor of 10 at least.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking about how you could basically monitor and get lots of great data.
Yeah.
So my philosophy, if you build it, it'll come, maybe, right? You need the advocate and you need to have it be in a way that is given credit. So part of this idea is as we go further out away from the business model of bringing in resources and putting out publications that's across academia to the student side of it, it's a very powerful tool, and getting that credit is part of that education. But APL in particular, so I've worked with them many times in sensors and quorum sensing and all that, and we've done a lot. And Chuck Young, who was there, and I've done it. And APL is a powerful institution itself because it's developed a lot of tools and techniques for the government in there. And the idea is to translate this out into public health and into engineering, into these approaches. And the sensors and technology that were developed from since 9/11 and other ones have a place in other questions in there. And so I think that there's some really neat synergy can go in there. And back to the School of Education and the other schools that we have, right? We have 9 schools within this university in here. Each one of them has a very strong capacity to integrate into this. It's finding the time. It's finding that time, and you guys bill like 10 increments per hour, something like 6 minutes. Now I'm going a little bit, but you know, there's different modalities we need to figure out. I think this is good. So I think also the other universities are doing this and they're ahead of us, right? So this is not necessarily us saying, hey, this is now, and ones we can list the ones that doing it. Us, you guys did a ton of work figuring out what else has been going on across the universe, across the United States. We're behind, but we still have a lot of neat books, as I call them, in there. So let's learn from them, not reinvent the wheel and say, well, what I wanted when they were talking about is like asking all these other ones what didn't work. Because I don't care about what works necessarily, is what didn't work, so we don't have to keep repeating that. That's part of something.
I think the one thing I would just add to in some of the conversations and interviews we've been doing with the faculty at JHU, one of the challenges to the sensors or running the experiments for courses in particular, there's not necessarily designated funds to support that. So it may have to come out of a separate grant, or probably others could be much better to these funding mechanisms than I could, but that if you want to run water samples that you collected on campus, finding a way to actually support your students in doing that requires some sort of course funding mechanism to do it.
You want to say a little bit about potential for funding that's coming through Campus Lab or no?
So we've received seed funding from the president's office to launch an initiative. And I think part of what we've been told as we get ready to do this is that our hope is to launch it in tandem with the new Johns Hopkins sustainability plan in the coming year at some point. That's because we're in the process of developing a roadmap for the future for our goals as an organization. And although any type of research that advances, I think, sustainability innovations is great. To synergize that with where we are trying to go as a campus is even better, right? If we can think about how do we leverage the research aspirations, with sustainability innovations to advance our goals, I mean, that's, I think, a really harmonious opportunity. And so one of the things we've been challenged to think about, though, is at the same time, like, this can't be all about grants. We need to develop a community of practice at the university that involves, I think, some of the relationship building that you talked about, Marty, which is about trust, which is about transparency, to Darren's point, and I've seen some other universities in our benchmarking that have taken the approach of, developing project databases that are proactive rather than reactive, rather than this is what we've done, here's some information about it, rather, here's what we want to do. Here are projects that are in the pipeline that we're thinking about that we could collaborate with researchers on. So a big piece of this, I think, is about the community and relationship piece and communicating what we do. Even just hearing about some of the initiatives in the room today, whether from the audience or from the panel, I think you can tell there's a ton going on. And so I think one of the things we need to challenge ourselves to do, within the Office of Sustainability and with our partners is tell that story. And I think once we start telling that story, there's going to be a lot more stories to tell. So I'm looking at the clock really quickly. It's 4:11. We probably have time for one more question. Oh, fun chat. So I'm gonna read this. So as someone that is joining virtually, what are some ways that we could engage remote students in some of these practices, such as localized citizen science activities integrated into classes, or accessing or analyzing data from on-campus data collection? Is that even feasible? This is George Weaver. Anyone have thoughts for George that we can share back to round out the session today?
Can I kind of try to respond to that?
Of course.
Because I think in terms of campuses, the lab, one advantage Hopkins does is its campuses are so different. So you're talking the environmental, so School of Public Health and Homewood are very different environments. So doing, using those as a lab gives education and research is a great kind of contrast. And then if you're using low-cost sensors, then you have the option for remote people who could be making measurements there and comparing them with. So I think the key is setting up some long-term monitoring. So we're always making these measurements, and then student can come and go and make measurements where they are and compare it. So I think that would be bringing the experiential learning.
That's spot on. I agree. Wouldn't it be cool if you were a student in 2050, you had 30 years of data coming in for monitoring? It'd be just like, let's not do this again. Let's think about something else. And how do you maintain that? Our technology changes every 18 months, man. You know, my 3 1/4 inch drives and floppy drive, I can't even read them anymore. I have no way of doing a CD-ROM. So how we do this is going to be that, you know, the brain science group, these other groups that are doing big data can be integrated into this campus lab across all the different school medicine as well. I mean,
I love that idea. Yeah, I know we're wrapping up now, but Thunby, were you going to add something, or were you just telling us that we had to wrap it, shut it down?
I was gonna add something. I think that there's been a lot of great groundwork laid. Some of it is also laid in Sunday. I'm the sustainability program manager with the Office of Sustainability, and I hope to manage our Sustainability Leadership Council, but I'll also be supporting the launch of the Campus Lab program. So I think it'll probably be part of my responsibility to help communicate these types of stories and to develop that database of potential projects. So I wanted to plug that. I've been telling you guys about the symposium. So you have my email address, but if you have any ideas or suggestions, whether it's existing projects, potential projects, or recommendations as we develop those resources, please be in touch with me so that we can build off of these ideas that were generated and see that were presented today. And if you're interested in being involved in a more ongoing basis, joining the Sustainability Leadership Council and things like this symposium are intended to kind of bring together and spark these types of conversations and relationship building to foster the Campus Lab type initiatives. So please continue to collaborate and show up. And we have our Campus Lab working group as part of the council. So this is something that you're passionate about or you're developing a passion for through attending this event. Feel free to reach out to me.
That's great. And I just want to respond really quickly to the point on data and then just wrap us up for today. And just to say, I totally agree in that. And I hadn't thought about this yet in the session, so I'm really glad someone brought it up, but the opportunity for data to be a bridge. And it does feel like we're on the vanguard sort of moment in terms of just how we are changing, how we're thinking about managing data into the future. I know we're in the middle, for example, of integrating a new university software solution that will take our utility data for electricity, steam, and chilled water and get it out of Excel spreadsheets and into a software platform that we can extrapolate, we can do dashboarding. I mean, I was talking to a facilities colleague the other day who said they just changed out an electricity meter in a building that was 100 years old. I mean, so we have a ton of work to do. People want to talk about all the fun stuff all the time, right? Like what are the solutions? Super fun, let's do stuff, right? But guess what? Everyone also wants to measure progress. And in order to measure progress, you need to baseline where you are. And that work is dirty oftentimes. And so I just see a lot of opportunity in that space.
That's fun.
I do. Yeah, it's fun when you get it done. It takes a couple of years. Big thank you to our panelists today. Thank you to everyone who showed up. Been a long day, hopefully a good day for all of you. And we have some refreshments in the main room and one more session for the rest of the day. So thank you all.
And wash your hands.
Wash your hands.
I think my